So I'm recording on this computer. So I added some additional wines to it. So if I click send, I'm grabbing all the wines. So I added 4 new wines. If I come over here to the actual local host, if I click wines, there we go, we get a bunch of wines. I can view each wine individually by wine/1. Why doesn't that work? Tried to get wines. Let's see. Let's go ahead and debug that. So first, let's go to our URLs. So it looks right here. It looks like I didn't have that slash there. So if I click that again, there we go. We have line 1, line 2, line, I don't even know if I'm spelling these wines right. Line 4. So we have, cool. There we go. You can also test it with Postman. So if I wanted to visit line 1, I'm doing a GET request, send. There we go, line 1, line 2, line 3, and line 4. Questions so far on creating or getting a list of all the wines, getting an individual wine, and adding a new wine?
Just to be clear, the form, the new wine method is only for making a post request for if you want to add something in your database. That's the way you would do it, like create a new user or anything, like you would do it that way right there.
Correct.
Okay.
There are other ways to create new users based off of the built-in forms for user creation form in Django, because a lot of that's already created for you. But if you created a user model from scratch, like in here, if you created you don't have to use models.model. So if you created a new user model from scratch and didn't want to use the built-in user model in Django, that's exactly how you would do it. Cool. So next we will actually want to edit these wines. So the edit is pretty much exactly same as new wine, except we want to grab the individual wine. So wine equals wine.objects.get ID equals wine ID. So we'll actually have to pass in a wine ID into the edit wine. Then pretty much everything else is exactly the same, except we want to pass in a wine instance into the form. So I'm going to come down here. I'm going to format the document. Looks like indentation isn't doing that well. So in here, I'm grabbing the individual wine from the database. If the request.method is post, I'm transforming that request into a data or Python object using the JSON.load, and I'm passing that data into the form as well as the instance of the wine object into the wine form. And then everything else is the same. I'm checking if the form is valid, saving it, and then I'm serializing it, the wine detail, and I'm just returning that wine back to the front end. So I can edit a wine as well. So I'm going to come over here. Let's edit. I just want to look at what wine I want to edit. So notice right here, I think this is wine 3. The price is 79.99.99. That's clearly an error. So I just want to make sure. Yep, that's it. So I can go to /edit. I just want to also see my URLs. /edit is correct. So go back to Postman. So this is, again, a post request. And inside the body, I'm going to have the wine, except I want to delete the errors. And then I'm going to send that back. Uh-oh, I got an error somewhere. I can tell I got an error because it's not returning that the wine. So we can actually see edit wines right there. So why is it a
I think on the URLs you don't have the closing caret.
Right here.
No, on your actual URLs, right there.
So like right. Oh, yep. Thank you. That would be it. So let's try that again. If I send that, still not working. Lines 3 edit. So get rid of that. There we go. It updated. So I was just missing, got rid of that. So now if I go to all lines, I'm doing a post request, I need to do a get request. There we go. We have the updated Brunello. I can do that by going to line 3. Great. So we've got edit line to work. Now we just need to delete the line. So we can say, hey, if the request, we're going to do a request.method equals, we're going to do another post request, because you could use post request to delete lines and everything. We're going to do line equals line.objects.get ID equals line ID. So we're going to have to pass in the line ID here into the delete line method. Then we can do line.delete. Delete is a method that we can use to delete stuff from the database. And then at the very end, we can just return JSON response where the data, we're going to just create our own data. We're going to say, hey, the status is successfully, I'm just going to copy this over. So status successfully deleted line and just return a 200. So if we come over here and we can do a postman, we can do /delete. So if we wanted to delete this line, we can do a post request and click send. It says status successfully deleted line. Now if we want to delete, see all the lines, make it a get request. There we got 3 lines. Again, if we click that, now we only have 3 lines. Questions about how we are passing data, converting it to a JSON, and passing it to the front end. So line 1, line 2, line 3 probably doesn't exist anymore because we deleted it from the database. Yep, queried it. Then line 4. All right, questions?
Are we gonna see the green colors as well, or it's just something we should, I don't know, download or?
This,
Yes.
these green colors?
Yeah, it's easy to read. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a plugin. This is a Chrome extension. So if you go down to more tools, extensions, I think it's called JSON formatter. That will do this.
Thanks.
All right. So that is creating a JSON or a Django backend API. So remember when we created a React, when we do fetch requests, we would fetch to a specific URL that would return a JSON response. This is where we would pass in, this URL is where we would pass into the fetch method in our React if we wanted to grab information. Now, let's go ahead and deploy this to the internet. So I'm going to kill the server. I'm going to clear the terminal. So now we're going to actually deploy to Heroku. So Heroku, I'm going to sign out. So if you don't have a Heroku, go ahead and sign up for a Heroku account. All this stuff is in the materials today. But in order to prepare your Django app to deploy to Heroku, there are some things that we first need to do. So let's come over here and just kind of look at what we actually need to do. So getting our Django ready for Heroku, we can visit the official docs, but the first thing we need to do is create a proc file. The first thing we do is create this proc file in our app's root directory. So if we close all that, our root directory is on the same level as our manage.py file. So at the same level as our manage.py file. So I can say proc file. And notice how it's already has like this K, this for Heroku, I believe, right there. And then in this file, we're going to tell Heroku which web server we want to use for our app. So we're going to copy this line, this web Gunicorn here. I'm going to paste that into here in the proc file and insert our project name here, which is our wine API. All right. So next, Gunicorn is a server Heroku recommends we use. So we're going to install that in our virtual environment. So pip install Gunicorn. There we go. So the next, it's pretty straightforward. We're going to pip install Django Heroku, which is a Python package that allows us to run, essentially access Heroku from the command line. Or actually, I don't even know what that does. I stand corrected. I'm not quite sure what Django Heroku does specifically. I think yeah, I'll have to research that. But that's the next thing we need to install. Pip install Django Heroku. Again, we're still in our virtual environment. I pip install Django Heroku. There we go. Then we need to place import Django Heroku at the very top of our settings.py file. So inside of our wines API, inside of our settings, at the very top, we need to import Django Heroku above everything else. So above the path, etc. You can even get rid of this. And at the very bottom of it, we need to put Django Heroku settings local. So at the very bottom, on line 111, there we go. So the final thing you need to do is create a requirements.txt file to include all of the modules for our Django project. So we can do pip freeze requirements.txt. Again, we're still in our virtual environment. So I click that. Oh, requirements. See what that looks like. Oh, requirements. And then I actually want to other way. So there's our requirements.txt file. And these are all the packages that we need. Questions so far about getting our Django project ready for deployment? So lastly, we can create a git ignore file. Touch git ignore. Git ignore. Right there. So again, the proc file needs to be on the same level as our manage.py file. The requirements.txt file also needs to be on the same level as our manage.py file. This is where people kind of get stuck sometimes. They have got the proc file in a different directory, etc. So inside of our git ignore file, we can include our venv file. And lastly, we can include these PyCache.
Hey, Tom, did you copy the manage.py or did you just delete it and create a new one from that, the other area? Or was it always in there already? I don't remember.
It was already, everything was already in here.
Okay.
Yep. So our py cache. So I can get rid of that. Great. Clear. Next, we have to create an app in Heroku. So it's pretty straightforward. Once you sign up, you can go ahead and create it, create an account. But I'm going to log into my email. So Heroku allows us to have 5 free apps in our associated with an account. So the first thing I need to do is create a new app. So create a new app. I'm going to say Mike Wine backend. So this is going to be the backend to our wine app. So create an app. So here we go. So there's 3 different deployment methods. We can use Heroku Git or GitHub or container. We're going to first start out with Heroku Git, and I'll kind of show you how to use GitHub as well. So these are literally the steps I need to create or need to execute in order to deploy my project to GitHub. So questions so far about GitHub, I'm not sorry, not deploy my project to GitHub, to Heroku. So any questions on Heroku so far, or getting my Django project set up to be deployed to Heroku?
I'm just wondering, is the database thing going to come up with pSQL and default credentials and all of that?
Yeah, so we'll go ahead and do that, or it's pretty much going to know once it's deploying to Heroku, it kind of already knows some stuff about the app. So the first thing we need to do is gain access to the Heroku command line. So we need to log into our Heroku from the command line. So I can do Heroku Login, and it says press any key to open up the browser to log in. So I can literally press any key. I just press H, opens up a new window. It says log into Heroku CLI. Click login. It says you're logged in. Now if I come over here to the terminal, it says opening browser, blah, 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 logged in, done, logged in as tapreet@gmail.com. So that's my current account right here. All right, so next I need to create a new Git repository. I need to CD into my project. I'm already into my project, so you want to be on the same level as manage.py. So I'm already in there. Then I want to initialize this project because notice how it's not initialized yet. So git init, initialize empty Git repository. Next, I want to git remote add Michael Wine API backend. So Heroku git :remote, then the name of the app, name of the Heroku app. It says set git remote Heroku to this Heroku app. Next, I just want to git add, just like I would normally git add everything. So I can do git status. I want to add all those files. I can say commit that. So git am make it better. This again could be anything. Initial show commit. All right. Next, I want to git push to the Heroku master branch. So again, here's the master branch, git push Heroku master. Now it's going to actually start building everything. See, it says, hey, Python app detected, installing Python 3.6, blah, blah, blah. So it's installing SQLite initially. That's great. Cool. Installing requirements. So
Hey, Tom, this created a new GitHub repo on your repository, or what?
No, it didn't do anything with GitHub. So this isn't app's not associated with GitHub at all.
Got it.
We just created a new Git repository using just Git. So the different versions are on our machine. So it says release version 5, deployed to Heroku. Did somebody have a question?
I was just going to ask how much data storage does Heroku allow? Like if you had photographs of every bottle of wine, would it max out your storage, or like
Probably.
describing each one, or like how does that work?
I'm sure there is a limit. I'm sure if you pass it or exceed it, Heroku will tell you like, hey, like you've hit your limit. But yeah, so I'm sure there is a limit to what you can store on the free version of Postgres in Heroku. Cool. It says verifying deploy done, so no errors. It says go to Heroku. Mike, all right. So cool. Now if I refresh this, everything should stay the same. But now I can actually open up my app. So it opens up in a new page. It says wines. So Mike wine backend.heroku.com. That's where my app is at. So I can actually go to wines. So to get all the wines. So programming error. So there aren't any wines. So what does it say? All right, it says like wines _ wine does not exist. So that's the name of that table. So if I look over here in my wine API, wine/wine does not exist. What haven't I done yet?
Migrate?
Yep, exactly. So if I come over here, it's all great. Now I can actually, once you're done, I can run the migrations to Heroku by running Heroku run python manage.py migrate. So that's great. Notice I'm still in my virtual environment.
So when you migrated before, it was just on your personal machine.
Yep, it was on my local machine. So now I have to actually migrate all the databases or all the tables in my database to Heroku. So I applied all those migrations. Now I can come over here and refresh. And there we go. We don't have any wines in our database. I can create some wines by using Postman. So instead of using localhost, I can go here using Mike Wine API, click send. Again, I don't get any wines back. If I want to create a new wine, I can come over here, post. Let's create this new wine. Click send. There we go. We created a new wine. I can say Barolo, 49. I like it a lot. There we go. And now I can grab all the wines. Oh, it's a post request. Do a get request. There, I've got 2 wines in the database in my Heroku. Click that. There, I've got 2 wines. Questions about deploying to GitHub, Heroku.
I've got another question that came to mind, Tom.
Yep.
So what's preventing somebody from putting a post, using the request library in Python and putting a request in a loop to your app right now and just posting like a billion wines, to your Heroku app?
Nothing.
Is there what would be the standard way to prevent that? I mean,
have a logged in user with the authorization token.
Okay.
So that's one way we can deploy to Heroku. And this is the probably easiest way, but there's also another way we can do it using GitHub. So let's first, I'm just going to make some changes here. Just added, I'm just going to add some comments. Added wine form just so I can deploy wine URLs. That's good. So if you want to talk about or utilize like continuous integration, you can directly connect to your GitHub or like a GitHub repository. And anytime you merge new code into the master branch, which should have already been tested and make sure everything works, it can automatically deploy to Heroku. So in my GitHub, my personal GitHub account, Tom Preet, I'm going to create a new repository. Let's call it Mike Wine API. Create a repository. Cool. Next, let's go ahead and so push an existing repository from the command line. Let's actually do this one. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to initialize a brand new Git right there. Or before I actually do that, so I created a new repository. Nothing's been committed yet. So I'm going to go back to Heroku. In deployment method, I'm doing GitHub connect to GitHub. I'm going to look for that Mike Wines repository. Search. So there's my Tom Preet Mike's Wine repository. So I'm going to connect to it. Unable to access connected repository in GitHub. So the first thing I need to do is add the repository to GitHub. So before I'm going to get rid of those comments initially and add this repository to GitHub. So I'm going to clear this, git init. I'm going to git add everything, git add, git status. All right, git git commit. See if this actually works. Git branch main. So if you noticed, we're switching the master branch to the main branch. So the naming of branches is the industry is, instead of using the word master because it's not politically correct, we're changing the master branch to the calling it main branch now, which makes more sense.
So would that throw an error if you tried to push it up there with master instead of main, or is that just like better practice now to make it main?
Yeah, it's better practice now to make it main.
Gotcha.
So, all right. So now if I refresh that, there we go. I've got my Wine API, my Django project up inside of there. So now I can go into here. I can refresh this. Okay, so it's already connected. App connected here, automatic deploys. So we can deploy automatically anytime we merge code into the main branch. If I had other branches, I could merge it anytime it merged to another branch, it would automatically deploy. So I'm going to say enable automatic deploys. And the first thing I'm going to do is come over here, resources, deploy, metrics. So in activity, you can see how many times I've deployed. So I've only deployed once at build successful, and it successfully deployed at 1140. That's when I was deploying it using the Heroku command line. So that was my first deploy, but now I'm connected to GitHub. And anytime I make changes and push, made a change here. Made a comment here. I'm just showing you what will actually change when I push this up to GitHub. So I think git add everything, git status. So I've modified to files. I can git commit, added some comments. Now I can do git push origin main because I want to push to the main branch. Click there. So I'm literally just pushing to GitHub now. Cool. I push to GitHub. I'm going to refresh it. So added some comments here. But if I go to my Heroku and go to metrics or activity, notice how it's saying view build progress. So there's a build currently in progress. And we can watch it progress. We can see the difference, the different files that were changed from here.
Hey, Tom, if you had a React app and a Django app, would you put them in 2 different repositories and do
Not
this
necessarily.
separately?
You don't have to put them into 2 different repositories. You can keep them in the same repository, but you will need 2 different Heroku apps.
Okay.
So you'll
Maybe
have
different branches or something like that?
yeah.
Okay.
So notice here, it's successfully deployed. I can compare the differences. So it comes over here. Here are the changes. So I made a comment there, and I made a change here.
So in the context of our assignments, this would be like setting up localhost 3001.
Yes. Yep. So yeah, this would be like localhost 3001 in your React app for the articles. All right. Any questions about the different methods to deploy? You don't have to set it up in GitHub like this. I just wanted to show you a more like automated way to automatically deploy things to your GitHub or from your GitHub to Heroku. Then once you actually deploy, you said if you want to use the command line, you can just follow through these steps.
So, Tom, if this is localhost 3001, where is localhost 3000? Like, where will the actual site be?
So in your React app, you'll actually it'll be like localhost 3000 will connect to. So is that your question? Like, where would the actual website be?
So this is where I can view the database, sort of, but where can I view the front end? And is that like another Heroku app?
Correct. So you'll create another Heroku app like where am I? Like new create app like Mike's Wine front end.
Got it.
And there you'll have your React app.
So every project has 2 Heroku apps.
Correct.
And they give us 5 for free. So by the time we make our personal project, we'll have to like delete one maybe or something like that.
Yeah. So so you'll probably even end up deleting some in the next couple of days, just based off of going through this process of deploying, just to get used to the deployment process and creating apps, etc.
Got it. Thank you.
So all this stuff is in the lecture materials today. There's also Django REST framework, which is another way you can create. So we created our serializers from scratch. So where is it? Our serializers from scratch. But the Django REST framework, which is another Python module or Python package, allows us to create these serializers very easily. And there's a tutorial on how to do that as well, if you want to do that. But again, there's a lot of magic happening underneath the hood. So we just didn't want to like, hey, this is all magic. We kind of want to show you what's actually happening on the back end. So essentially, instead of our URLs within our in our app, so instead of these URLs, Django REST framework has something called a default router, which already has predefined routes to handle listing all the projects, or listing all the wines, creating new wines, editing wines, destroying wines. And that's literally just these 3 lines of code, or I guess 4 lines of code. Serializers. So inside of the Django REST framework, they have a serializers class, model serializer. This wine serializer, again, does all the same things that this does, but it's only 3 lines of code, similar to like a form. And then also they have something called a model view set, which essentially handles listing all the wines, creating all the wines, and all of that stuff, and passing stuff into the wine serializer in just 3 lines of code. So everything else is pretty much the same except for your serializers, your URLs, and your views. So if you want to, after you go through this tutorial, you can go back and refactor it using the Django REST framework if you want. Does anybody have any questions about setting up Django as an API? All right.